What separates a good archaeological discovery from a great one? How do you know the difference between the kind of archaeological discovery you could make on any dig, or any day, or one that might fundamentally change our understanding of history? The answer to that is training and experience. But you could take a shortcut by watching our videos. We give you the lowdown on amazing archaeological finds all the time, and we're going to do it again now. Imagine digging up your kitchen floor and finding a collection of gold coins worth more than $300,000. There's a couple in England who didn't have to imagine that unlikely scenario because it happened to them in September 2022. The hoard of rare coins was found when the couple, who wished to remain anonymous but live in the Yorkshire village of Ellerby, were performing renovation work on their kitchen. They initially thought they'd hit an electrical cable, but on closer inspection it turned out to be an old cup full of 260 solid gold coins. The oldest of the coins dates to the reign of James I in the early 17th century, with the latest minted during the reign of George I. Discoveries like this are usually declared as treasure and seized by the state, but that rule doesn't apply to anything less than 300 years old. The youngest of the coins is only 292 years old, and so that age applies to the whole hoard. That leaves the lucky couple free to sell the coins at auction. No wonder they want to remain anonymous. You may think that folding chairs are an invention of the modern age, but you'd be wrong. In August 2022, a folding chair was found in the grave of a woman who was buried in Middle Franconia, Bavaria, Germany, 1,400 years ago. The medieval folding chair had been carefully placed at the feet of the buried woman. We don't know who she was, but we can confirm that she was also buried with colorful glass beads, a belt, a pendant of brooches, and a large pearl. She was somewhere between 40 and 50 years old when she passed away. The other artifacts in the grave confirm that this woman was probably of high status, but they're not exactly unusual finds. The folding chair, on the other hand, is extremely rare. It's only the second time a chair of this type of such an age has ever been found in Germany. Fewer than 30 have been found in all of Europe. Why are they so rare? We can only guess. Perhaps the luxury of having a folding chair is something only the rich could afford. Or maybe the idea of a convenient chair you could pick up and carry around with you didn't really catch on until hundreds of years later. Sticking with the theme of rare discoveries, an archaeological excavation at the well-known Cobalt burial ground in Bosnia uncovered hundreds of artifacts, including a type of prehistoric fibula that experts have never seen before. There are lots of unopened graves at Cobalt, which is on a hilltop to the west of Sarajevo, and was first founded around 3,300 years ago. But excavations only began there in 2019, so there's a lot still to do. Experts think that this was a farming community, and that it remained settled for around 1,000 years. Their unusual burial practices involved making stone tombs and then surrounding them with another ring of stone before placing 4 to 5 people inside each tomb. Many of the burials include grave goods, and many of the grave goods are unique. Historians and archaeologists have come across bronze fibula before, but never any that take these particular shapes. They're thought to be some of the oldest metal objects ever worked on in Bosnia. There are both inhumations and cremations at the site, which is another oddity in Bronze Age Europe. Clearly, the people who lived here had a culture all of their own. It would have been easy to forgive archaeologists if they'd overlooked this next discovery. It comes from an ancient burial ground in Haltern am See, Germany, where it was found in early 2020. But when it was discovered, it was nothing more than a rusted chunk of metal with an uncanny resemblance to a chicken tender. Fortunately, 19-year-old student archaeologist Nico Kalman had a feeling that something valuable might be hiding beneath the rust and corrosion. It took 9 months of careful grinding and sandblasting to prove him right. But when the experts completed their work, they found themselves looking at a beautiful 2,000-year-old Roman dagger, still in its original decorative sheath. Thousands of Roman soldiers were stationed in the area during the 15-year Roman occupation, and hundreds of their graves have been excavated. But this is the only dagger of this design that's ever been found. It might be that the occupant of the grave was a captain or leader. Unsurprisingly, the find has now been taken under the protection of a local museum, where it's been on public display since the start of 2022. What's better than finding a gold ring in a prehistoric grave? Finding 169 gold rings in a prehistoric grave. This is a haul of golden rings so big that Sonic the Hedgehog would have been proud of it. The rings were found in a prehistoric grave site in Bihor County, Crisana, Romania, in August 2022, as construction workers dug up the ground in the region ahead of the construction of a new road. In doing so, they discovered 3 Neolithic-era grave sites, 2 graves from the Bronze Age, and a further 2 from the Roman era. It's likely that the female occupant of the grave containing the gold rings was from the Tzipolgar culture, which lived in Crisana 6,500 years ago. If you're wondering what she needed so many rings for, they were holding her hair in place. They weren't the only accessories she was buried with. The grave also contained a copper bracelet, neck rings, golden beads, and a further 800 beads made from animal bones. Unsurprisingly, archaeologists are confident that she was a high-ranking member of this ancient society, perhaps even a queen. We've always known that Via Tiburtina, which leads out of Rome to the northeast of the city, is an ancient Roman road. However, what we didn't know until very recently is that Via Tiburtina also features a rare Roman Republic-era bridge. Archaeologists have now found the remains of the bridge, along with pottery and tufa blocks left over from its construction. By studying these artifacts, they've been able to confirm that the bridge was created around 2,200 years ago. Its purpose was to cross a small tributary of the Anine River called the Fosso de Pratolungo. The road itself is around 100 years older. Bridges from the time of the Middle Republic are incredibly rare finds. Until now, the oldest in the city of Rome has been the Pons Fabricus, which can trace its roots to the year 62 BCE. That's right at the end of the Roman Republic period. However, anyone who likes the idea of checking the bridge out for themselves ought not to get too excited. It's going to be extensively mapped and surveyed, but once the professionals are done with it, they'll rebury it for its own protection. The Tributina is being enlarged, and this discovery doesn't change those plans. If it wasn't buried, it would be destroyed by construction work. We know the perfect place to go next. It's an abandoned cobalt mine that's full of so many artifacts left behind by 19th century miners that archaeologists have compared it to a time capsule. The mine is in Alderley Edge in Cheshire, England, and was discovered in July 2022. Although it was last used in the 19th century, the history of mining in the area can be traced back to the prehistoric era. The extraction of cobalt in Alderley Edge accelerated during the 19th century because of the Napoleonic Wars, but after that acceleration, it closed for good in 1810. It's been abandoned ever since, and so have all the personal effects left inside it. They include leather shoes, jackets, clay pipes, forgotten mining machinery, and even a few inscriptions written by the miners using candle soot. One of them, initialed WS and dated to the 20th of August 1810, records the closure of the mine. The strangest item recovered by archaeologists so far is a clay bowl that was deliberately buried within a wall. Experts think this might have been the act of a superstitious miner offering thanks to the gods for a good vein of minerals. Some shipwrecks are more important than others. That's why a set of old wrecks around Dorset and the Isle of Wight in the United Kingdom were afforded special protection in July 2022. The status has been bestowed upon 3 wrecks, one of which is known as the Mortimer wreck and is now the oldest protected shipwreck in English waters. Analysis of its timbers suggests that it's been in the water since somewhere around the year 1242. The other 2 wrecks, both of which are off the coast of the tiny Isle of Wight, are more likely to be from the 16th or 17th centuries. The Mortar wreck is especially significant, not just because of its age, but also because of what's aboard it. It still contains a cargo of Gothic gravestones. Before it was found in 2020, there were no known surviving shipwrecks in British waters from any time between the 11th century and the 14th. The wreck is in excellent condition for something of such age, but there's no obvious telltale sign of why it sank. Perhaps the gravestones were simply too heavy for it. In 2018, archaeologists found what they thought was a rusty, corroded metal plate at the site of an old Roman battlefield in Krefeld, Germany. In 2022, those same archaeologists found out that their rusty, corroded plate was, in fact, an incredibly rare Batavian Cavalry mask of the kind that would have been worn by horsemen during the Batavi War in the year 69. The face protection is of the Nijmegen-Kops type and is one of only 15 ever to have been found. All 15 have been found in the region of the Nijmegen-Kops Plateau, hence the name. This suggests that their use was very localized, and so they may have been developed and manufactured in the area. The Batavi were a Germanic tribe who lived in the area around the Rhine Delta, close to the Netherlands, and were described by the Roman historian Tacitus as the bravest and most fearsome of all the tribes in the region. Even the Romans were a little wary of them, which is why they granted them tax and tribute exemptions in return for their services as infantry and cavalry within the Imperial Guard. Our next discovery comes from July 2022, when archaeologists unearthed the tomb of an Egyptian commander who was laid to rest 2,600 years ago. The tomb has been described as unique, even by Egyptian standards, and was found by a team of Czech archaeologists close to the Giza Plateau. The tomb contains an inscription, so we know the commander's name. He was called Wahibra Merinaith. What makes both his role and his tomb so unique is that rather than leading Egyptians, he led battalions of foreign mercenaries. Historians say this is one of the ancient world's first acts of genuine globalism. The tomb is square and made up of 2 tiers, 20 feet deep and measuring 45 feet by 45 feet. Even the commander's sarcophagus has an inner and outer section, with the outer section made of white limestone and the inner section made from basalt and carved into the shape of a human body. Unfortunately, it appears that the tomb was broken into around 1,000 years ago, and the mummified remains of the commander were stolen. We can only guess what tomb raiders wanted with a 1,600-year-old body. Next up is a clay figurine that was found in Bavaria, Germany in July 2022. It's a fairly rustic-looking artifact, but historians think it might be a representation of a prehistoric water goddess. The best guess of experts is that it was made somewhere between 2,500 and 2,800 years ago, which means it's a relic of the Iron Age. That tallies with the fact that it was found close to the remains of a Hallstatt period settlement near the Unkenbach lowlands. The Hallstatt culture once dominated this part of Western Europe, beginning in the Late Bronze Age and lasting until the Early Iron Age. Although the figurine looks to be in rough shape, it shows no sign of the kind of rounded weathering that would be expected of hydraulic action. That suggests it was deposited in the gully it was found in deliberately, making it highly likely to have been a votive offering, and further supporting the idea it might be connected to a water goddess. The gully would have been a sacred place for ritual offerings such as these. This might be a habit that the people of the Hallstatt culture picked up from the cultures that lived around the Black Sea. who started making figures like this 5,000 years ago. Many of the items you'll find in museums will have been donated to the museum by well-wishers, but the museums usually have an idea of where the artifacts have been before arriving in the museum. That wasn't the case with the mysterious Viking jewelry that was donated to the University of Stavanger in Norway in July 2022. The set, which is in near pristine condition, includes a pair of open-work bronze brooches with their original silver plating still attached, strings of variegated beads, and a bronze bracelet. A single mosaic bead has helped the museum's experts to date the set to around the year 850. They have no doubt the jewelry is genuine, but there's no record of its existence anywhere, at any point, prior to its donation to the museum. It's almost as if someone's been hiding them within their family for hundreds of years. Well, perhaps they have. The only thing the donors could tell the museum about the jewelry is that it was apparently found in a village called Frafjord on the southwest coast during the 1950s, but there's no record of their discovery from the time. Perhaps this will forever remain a mystery, but the museum doesn't mind. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and enjoy watching new videos on my channel. Thanks for watching, and see you soon!